So the first question is, can the president, can an impeachment trial take place during the recess?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The answer is the impeachment court can only be constituted in a proper referral when the Senate is in session. If the Senate is not in session as it is today, this impeachment court cannot constitute itself because the reference of the impeachment complaint is to the Senate. And therefore, the Senate, in a formal session, will refer this to the impeachment court. So, the impeachment court has to be created upon a session of the Senate. Can the president call a special session? Yes, the power of the president to call a special session is not limited by anything. If it is the theory that the impeachment, the president can even call a special session so that the impeachment trial can take place. And if the president can call a special session to consider legislative measures, even the renaming of a street is a legislative measure which we can taken up in a special session. How much more an impeachment trial? In my view, an impeachment trial can be called by the president in a special session. What's the next question?
I think we can stick to the first question first, Senator.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Justice Carpio Morales, your thoughts?
The Senate is in recess with respect to its legislative functions. Impeachment is not a legislative function of Congress. The impeachment provisions fall under the accountability provisions of the Supreme Court and not under the legislative department provisions of the Supreme Court. So, given that, I believe that impeachment cannot be constituted during recess. This does not mean that during recess, the Senate cannot call for special session. But this is prescribed by so many limitations, including only on urgent legislative matters, and given that, among others, and given that impeachment is not included as among the reasons why special session can be conducted, my conclusion is that no, impeachment proceedings or this impeachment trial cannot be conducted during recess. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Carpio Morales. May we hear from Prof. De Vera and then Prof. Te first.
Thank you, Prof. Tomase, and thank you to our co-panelists for this afternoon. I tend to agree with the view that's already been presented, that while the Senate is in recess, they will not be able to constitute themselves into the impeachment court. However, there's another question that perhaps we can discuss in the second round, which is, are there preparatory steps that may be undertaken while the Senate is in recess, so that if they do decide immediately upon resumption of session on June 2 to constitute themselves into an impeachment court, then trial can proceed forthwith. Noting that in the two previous impeachment trials, of course we can ask our Senate President here, shortly after the transmittal of the articles of impeachment, I think within a few days, the impeachment court was constituted and subsequently trial ensued. Thank you.
Prof. Te?
Thank you. Yes, I share what is now apparently a consensus, that the Senate cannot hold the trial during the recess. This is simply because when the articles were transmitted, the Senate had already gone on recess without taking steps to convene the Senate as a court to draft up the rules of impeachment even if they were simply to adopt the previous rules of impeachment that had been used by the Senate before. And so, yes, I would share that consensus, but I also agree with Professor Gwen that during this break, during this recess, the question of whether the Senate can take certain preparatory steps towards making the trial, any trial that may happen once the recess ends, perhaps more expeditious. Whether that could happen, I think that is not foreclosed as far as the Senate is concerned.
Thank you, Professor Te. So if I can ask our Senator Drilon or Justice Carpio Morales or our colleagues in the faculty here, there is, however, this view from other academics, other scholars who think that delaying the impeachment to when session resumes in June 2 might frustrate both the word forthwith in the Constitution and also principles of accountability. And I think I was in a conversation with Justice Vivi Mendoza on this, where he says that the great battlefield of constitutional law today is the meaning of the word, or is the word forthwith. So I wonder what your thoughts would be in relation to that. Would delaying impeachment actually result in frustrating accountability?
You know, to resolve that question, I have asked the President to call a special session. Even if you don't include as an item in the special session the impeachment trial, the Constitution provides that the Senate that the impeachment trial shall take place forthwith in the Senate. So even when as a reality, when the President calls the Senate into a special session, the first item on the agenda is consideration of the impeachment complaint filed by the House. And that will be referred to the impeachment court. And then you start the impeachment trial. So I strongly believe that when the President calls for a special session, the impeachment trial immediately takes place because of the mandate of the Constitution.
Thank you, Senator Drilon. Justice Carpio Morales?
According to Black Dictionary, forthwith means immediately, at once, but it also considers reasonable delay.
Some of the senators, current senators, are running for re-election. To me, these constitute circumstances that can abate the use of the word forthwith. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice. Prof. Gwen, Prof. Te.
Thank you, Justice. My understanding of the word forthwith used in the Constitution is not just immediately, but also a sense, as Justice Carpio Morales pointed out, reasonableness, that it means avoidance, undue delay. So that if the action of the Senate is not animated or motivated by imposing undue delay in commencing the proceedings, I think they would well be in compliance with the constitutional mandate to proceed with the impeachment trial forthwith.
Thank you, Prof. Te.
As litigators would know, often when you go before a court and ask for time, the court will usually ask you if you're trying to delay the proceedings. So the question of forthwith, I think, also goes into motivation or intent or things that you can foresee or cannot foresee. So I would agree with Justice Carpio Morales that while it would mean by ordinary meaning, immediately, but it also takes into account circumstances. It also takes into account reason, and it takes into account things that the Senate cannot control, like the recess. The objective circumstances being that the transmittal was made on the last day of the session, and they had gone into recess before they had referred it to the impeachment court. Therefore, that may constitute, even though there is a span of time that intervenes, that may constitute reasonable delay, as it were, and would not frustrate the meaning of the word forthwith.
Commissioner Sarmiento, I'd like to ask if you have a response to these views.
I see the wisdom of the responses of Senator Frank, Justice Carpio, and my co-panelists. But I mentioned in my presentation, this is a very novel addition in our history as a people, not even found in previous constitutions and many constitutions of the world. Very unique provision in the Constitution. Traditionally, yes, on recess cannot be, unless the President calls for a special session. But this is a novel addition in the Constitution. And in the light of the intention of the framers of the Constitution, na walang patumpik-tumpik, umpisan kaagad. Because it's a time compelling, significant activity in our country. Accountability, checking of use of powers, etc., etc. Then, to me, I would say that regardless of the recess, a time impeachment trial should begin in the light of this constitutional provision.
Yeah. I cannot accept the proposition that simply because the senators will be campaigning such an important and critical constitutional duty to constitute itself as an impeachment court and try the impeachment complaint can be deferred. Firstly, the Constitution says shall be tried forthwith. And we give ordinary meaning to ordinary words. Forthwith means immediately. And it is my respectful submission that the campaign period is not a valid reason to postpone. And in fact, there should be no circumstance to justify a deferment because the Constitution mandates the performance of a constitutional duty forthwith. The only reason why we need a special session is the formal referral of the impeachment complaint to the impeachment court.
Thank you, Senator.
Mr. Tamase, may I make a follow-up? We have in constitutional law the doctrine of constitutional supremacy. All laws, all regulations, all contracts have to yield to the supremacy of the Constitution. I think all lawyers would know that doctrine. So if recess is a legal provision, it is a provision in the rules of the Senate. They have to yield to the command of the Constitution about forthwith proceed.
Thank you, Commissioner Sarmiento. I understand it may have also been in line with innovations in the 1987 Constitution to make impeachment easier, like lowering the threshold for the impeachment vote in Congress. Would that play a role in how we interpret the word forthwith, or how we interpret the urgency of an impeachment complaint, such that it's not frustrated by the typical excuses that can be brought up by Congress?
I agree with you, Professor Tamase, on this. And again, the background intent is that it is an extremely ordinary remedy to preserve constitutional government, to preserve the order in our country, to avoid chaos. So to me, the lowering is very relevant to this forthwith proceed provision in the Constitution.
Thank you, Commissioner Sarmiento. I think the reason why, Justice, thank you. Would you have a response to this question? I think the points of Commissioner Sarmiento. Thank you, Justice.
I'm going to respond to the fact that, wait, the Hello Garcia case, Hello Garcia, I'm sorry. The Supreme Court said that the Senate is a continuing body, it's a continuing institution, but the discharge of its day-to-day normal functions, it is independent of the predecessor. In other words, it's not bound by what the preceding Congress Senate did. So any unfinished matter can be considered as if it's set for the first time. Thank you.
Thank you.